Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why it is probably much better for people to use fat-free mass index to determine how much muscle you can hold rather than silly things like flat numbers. And I want to get into that in a minute as far as the flat numbers thing. But one of the things that people need to keep in mind, they'll argue, oh, the fat-free mass index isn't accurate. Actually, it actually is pretty dang accurate. And meaning usually when you start talking about getting into that 24.5 to 25 fat-free mass index for someone who's reasonably lean, right? You can actually bulk and get really fat and actually pass it. Sumo wrestlers pass that 25. Okay, but we're talking about reasonably lean people. That you usually have to be almost genetically gifted to hit the 25. Right, that's not the norm. So when people say things, oh, guys can get a lot bigger than the 25, no, they're using gear. They're using gear. And again, because I know guys who are legitimately natural, who do compete in bodybuilding and things, who have a very large amounts of experience lifting, who are genetically gifted, who get accused of blasting tons of gear, who still are in the 24.7, 24.8 range when they trim down lean. So put that in perspective. Those guys get accused of using gear, and they're oftentimes very gifted people with a decade or more of training experience. Hey, that's what it takes to get up towards 25. And when people say, well, that doesn't account for frame size, no, that does account for frame size. Your height is the biggest chunk of your frame size. Yes, some of us have wider shoulders and pelvises and things than others, like I do. But that's not going to put massive amounts of extra muscle on you. It may make you look bigger in person or wider or thicker, but it's not going to actually help you hold another 10 pounds of muscle. Okay? It's not going to help you hold an extra 10 pounds of muscle. It might be a couple pounds of extra muscle your frame can hold, but it's not going to be enormous amounts. That's not going to take you from, with the same amount of training time, up 2 whole points on the fat-free mass index. Okay? So people need perspective there. And actually, the reality is when you really get to know people and find out who uses and who doesn't, those studies that looked at that found that the average anabolic user had a 24.5. Okay, the average anabolic user. And there are a lot of people out there who tried to say the fat-free mass index doesn't work, who themselves have never even reached a 24. Meaning there are experts who've done bodybuilding and training and everything else who will say, oh, it doesn't work, it's not real. And you look at them and they're at a 23. It's like it took you 15 years to get to a 23, but then you want to argue that the 25 is easily passable. Well, why don't you get to 24 and then come back and say the 25 is passable? Like 24 is not even passable for you. And there's multiple guys out there who've done that, and we all know who they are. They're just not that big. So it's ironic that they would be making those claims. It's like, we'll give a list of your clients who are passing it. Probably not. And actually, it works very well. And the funny thing is not the people passing it, it's the people who don't think they can reach it. Like, because they haven't done the math and looked at it. The problem we have is that a lot of people have bought into this other notion. And what is that notion? The flat number. Oh, you can gain maybe 25 pounds of muscle. And I said stuff like that a long time ago. I'm like, if you're short or maybe average height, but what's average height? I have an international audience, so average height is going to be like global average height, not America, not Sweden, right? Around the world. Average height globally for men is probably about 5'6", 5'7". Well, in that case, if you're in that height range, 25 pounds of solid muscle is pretty dang good. Average height in America is like 5'9", which is where I'm at. And you go to certain other countries and that would be considered tall. In America, that's average. But we have people who are very tall. And we have people who start out at different points, and that's the big problem too. People who start out very skinny will go, oh man, 25 pounds of muscle. Well, even at my current body fat, if I were to gain 25 pounds of muscle and even cut down, they're like, I would only be 165 pounds. Well, no, because you're underweight. Okay, you're underweight. And what skinny guys don't realize is that they start with less muscle. In other words, if you have stayed really, really skinny because of under eating, and that is what causes it, by the way, it's not anything else, it's your under eating. You can argue about why you burn calories all you want. Okay, that's a point of contention as to the different factors involved. But you don't eat enough. That's why you're skinny. That is the only reason. Because even if you burned 4,000 calories a day due to whatever, you could eat 4,200 and gain weight. Right? You do not eat enough. Simple mathematical formula. Skinny guys have less muscle. They have to play catch up when they start training. So 25 pounds for them might not actually be anywhere near their natural limit. The fat guy, the guy who bulked up, well, we'll call it bulking, a guy who got up to 250 pounds and then starts working out and starts losing weight, might have started with 10 pounds extra muscle than had he been at a normal weight. Like if that guy was average height and he's supposed to be 160 and he's 250, even after he trims down, he might have 10 pounds of extra muscle than what he would have had he never been fat to begin with. Because being overweight puts muscle on your frame. For a whole host of reasons. Yes, fat people have more muscle than skinny people, even when they don't work out. That's not a point of debate either, by the way. It's pretty well understood, both in the evidence that it does happen, and we actually know the multiple pathways through which it happens. All right? So that point isn't even debated. It's understood. They have more muscle. So if they have more muscle on their frame, people will try to get this idea, oh, well, if you can gain about X amount of muscle, that must be what they can gain after they start training. No, they've already gained some of the muscle that their frame will hold. Okay, that's why those flat numbers don't work. They don't account for your starting point relative to which you would have been under normal conditions, because being really underweight or being overweight are not technically normal conditions. Number two, they don't account for height. Now, people will say, well, what do you mean, Jason? It's not possible for someone to gain more than that just because they're taller. It's going to be a couple pounds, right? And it's like, no. Like, take someone who's 6'3", and I've dealt with this with clients and other people in the past. I've had several clients who were over 6 foot tall. And they're talking about, well, I can only gain X amount. I'm going to have to get fat to get up to this body weight. And I'm like, no, man, you need to bulk to 230 or 240 and then trim down. They're like, what? No, I'd be enormously fat because I can only gain 25 pounds of muscle, and I'm sure I've gained at least 10. And I weigh 180 pounds at 6'3", right? Which is really skinny. So in their mind, they're like, I can only gain 15 pounds more muscle. Now, what's the reality of it? If a guy at 6'3" was 220 pounds, so 40 pounds heavier than where this guy is that I'm just naming, for example, 40 pounds heavier. You guys go plug in the math at 10% body fat, which you should have a visible six-pack at 10%, right? Visible six-pack at 220. What do you think a 6'3" guy's fat-free mass index is going to be? It's going to be 24 point something. It is going to be under 25. Okay, he's going to be like 24 and a half. In other words, with really, really hard work and putting in a serious time commitment, that's doable. But you'll have a guy like that who will say, you mean I can gain another 40 pounds and still be lean later? Well, they'll have to probably bulk and cut, right? They'll have to cut down to the 220. So they're going to have to gain more than 40 pounds. But there might be several bulks and cuts involved over several years to get there. But you'll do the math and go, this is someone who's already been training. They've already gained some muscle, and they're still 40 pounds under the cap weight. So if you look at that and people are caught up in this idea of something like 25 pounds, do you see the problem? No, if a guy that tall, it could be 45, it could be 50 pounds, and they could still be under the fat-free mass index of 25. And with a really short guy, let's say you take a short guy who was fat and then dieted down, Do you really think he's going to put on 25 pounds of muscle? You think a guy who's 5'4" is going to put on another 25 pounds of muscle from there? No. Use the fat-free mass index. As long as you know roughly what your body fat is and you're not lying about your height, you can plug the numbers in. Be honest with yourself about what your height really is. Measure it. Find out. It's a much, much better tool. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.